Thomas woke up in a ditch, covered in mud that smelled like death itself. Flies buzzed around his face. His expensive clothes were gone, replaced by torn, filthy rags. His bare feet were bleeding. He touched his face and felt a rough, unshaved beard. This couldn't be real. "Where am I?" he whispered, his voice shaking. He looked around frantically. The place looked familiar, yet completely strange. He was somewhere in Itoro, but not the part he knew. Not the clean estate where his family's mansion stood tall and proud. This was the dirty, broken side of the village, the side he had always laughed at. Hello family, welcome back. Please take a moment to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. It truly means a lot to us. Don't forget to share it with your friends and loved ones and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. So sit back and relax as we dive into the story. Thomas tried to stand, but his legs were weak. When he finally managed to get up, people walked past him without a second glance. Some looked at him with disgust, others with pity. One woman covered her child's eyes and hurried away. "Wait," Thomas called out. "I need help." No one stopped. He stumbled to a nearby stream and looked at his reflection in the water. The face staring back was thin, dirty, and desperate. His usually neat hair was wild and matted. His eyes looked hollow and afraid. "This is a nightmare," he said to himself. "I'll wake up soon. I have to." But deep down he knew this was real. And somewhere in his confused mind he remembered how it all started. 3 weeks earlier, the rain had poured for 3 whole days over Itoro village. When it finally stopped, the roads were destroyed. Huge potholes filled with brown water stretched across every street. The villagers walked carefully through the mud, carrying their goods on their heads, trying not to slip. Among them was elder Mama Grace, a woman so old that no one could remember her real age. Everyone in the village called her Elder Mama. She had lived in Itoro longer than anyone else. Some said she was wise beyond measure. Others whispered that she had spiritual powers. But everyone respected her. That morning, Elder Mama had gone into the forest to gather firewood for cooking. Even at her age, she moved with surprising grace. Her back was bent, but she was strong. By noon, she had tied her firewood into a neat bundle and balanced it on her head. Then she began the slow walk back home. Meanwhile, in Lagos, a white Rolls-Royce pulled out of a massive mansion. Inside were 2 brothers, Thomas and Kenneth Adewale. Their father, Chief Ola Adewale, was one of the richest men in Nigeria. He owned oil companies, hotels, and land across the country. Thomas, the older brother by just 12 minutes, sat in the driver's seat. He wore a crisp white agbada with gold chains around his neck. His designer watch gleamed in the sunlight. He carried himself like someone who owned the world. Kenneth, though equally well-dressed, was different. Kenneth was quieter than his brother. He preferred reading books to partying in nightclubs. While Thomas loved showing off his wealth on social media, Kenneth volunteered at charity organizations. The brothers were like day and night. Their father had sent them to the family's rural estate in Itoro to check on a land deal. Kenneth took the assignment seriously, but Thomas saw it as a waste of time. "Why do we have to go to that backward village?" Thomas complained as they drove. "There's nothing there but poverty and dirt." "It's our father's business," Kenneth replied calmly. "And those are real people living there, not just dirt." Thomas rolled his eyes and turned up the music. Afrobeats blasted from the expensive speakers as they left the smooth Lagos highways and entered the muddy roads of Itoro. "Look at this place," Thomas said with disgust. "It's like they're living in the Stone Age. No proper roads, no development. Yet they go to church every Sunday praying for miracles. Maybe God is tired of listening to them." "Don't talk like that," Kenneth warned, his voice firm. "These people deserve respect." Thomas just laughed and drove faster. As they approached a particularly deep puddle, Thomas saw an old woman walking by the roadside. She was carrying firewood on her head, moving slowly and carefully through the mud. It was Elder Mama Grace. Something cruel flickered in Thomas's eyes. Without warning, he pressed hard on the accelerator. "Thomas, no. Watch out," Kenneth shouted. But it was too late. The car hit the puddle at full speed. A massive wave of dirty, stinking water exploded upward and crashed over Elder Mama Grace. The force knocked her firewood to the ground. Her headscarf flew off. She stood there, completely drenched from head to toe, water dripping down her face. Thomas leaned out of the window, laughing loudly. "Sorry, Mama. Hope you brought spare clothes," he shouted, still laughing. Kenneth's face went pale with horror. "Thomas, stop the car right now. Go back and apologize." "Apologize?" Thomas scoffed. "To some old woman covered in mud? Come on, Kenneth. Don't be soft. She should be grateful I didn't run her over. Your heart is becoming something ugly, Kenneth said, staring at his brother like he didn't recognize him anymore. Whatever, Thomas replied, cranking the music up louder. We'll be out of this dump soon anyway. But elder Mama Grace said nothing. She just stood there watching the white Rolls-Royce disappear down the muddy road. Her eyes didn't blink. Her lips didn't move. But the wind around her began to shift. The sky, which had been bright just moments before, suddenly dimmed. Dark clouds appeared from nowhere. A black cat emerged from the nearby bushes and rubbed against her legs, meowing softly as if sensing something terrible was about to happen. Elder Mama Grace's voice, when she finally spoke, was barely a whisper. Let him walk where he splashed. That evening, while Thomas partied with friends he had flown in from Lagos, Kenneth couldn't shake the guilt. The image of the drenched old woman kept replaying in his mind. Around 8 o'clock, while Thomas was busy taking selfies and drinking expensive champagne, Kenneth slipped out of the mansion. He drove back to the spot where the incident had happened. Under a large mango tree, he found elder Mama Grace sitting quietly. She had dried her wrapper on a nearby bush branch. Her black cat sat beside her, watching Kenneth approach. Kenneth walked slowly, respectfully. Mama, please, I'm so sorry for what my brother did. Please forgive us. Elder Mama Grace didn't respond immediately. She just sat there looking at the ground. Then slowly she raised her head and looked directly into Kenneth's eyes. Her gaze was deep and knowing, as if she could see straight into his soul. You are not like him, she said softly. You still carry your mother's kindness in your heart. I forgive you. Kenneth felt relief wash over him. Thank you, Mama. Thank you so much. But then her expression changed. Her voice became firm. But your brother? Let him learn what it means to walk in filth. Kenneth's heart tightened with fear. Please, Mama, don't curse him. He's foolish, but he's still my brother. Elder Mama Grace's lips curved into a sad smile. Not a curse, my son. A lesson. Some people must lose everything before they can learn anything. That night, as rain began to fall once again over Itoro, Thomas fell into a deep sleep. He had drunk too much and laughed too loud. He collapsed into bed without even removing his gold chains. By dawn, the mansion was in complete chaos. Thomas was gone. The servants searched everywhere. His bed was untouched, as if he had never slept in it. His phone was still charging on the nightstand. His gold chains hung neatly where he had left them. His designer shoes were lined up by the door. But Thomas himself had vanished into thin air. Kenneth was the first to panic. He ran through every room, checked the bathrooms, searched the garden, even looked in the garage. Nothing. He pulled up the security footage on his laptop with shaking hands. The last image of Thomas was from 10:17 the previous night. The video showed him entering his bedroom after a video call with a friend in Lagos. After that, nothing. No one entered. No one left. It was as if Thomas had simply disappeared. Kenneth immediately called their father. Papa, Thomas is missing. He's gone. Chief Adewale's voice exploded through the phone. What do you mean missing? Someone kidnapped my son under my own roof? Call the police immediately. Lock all the gates. I'm offering a 10 million naira reward. The police arrived within an hour. They searched the entire property. They questioned every servant, every guard, every visitor from the night before. They checked for forced entry, examined windows, looked for tire marks outside. They found absolutely nothing. It's like he vanished into thin air, one officer said, scratching his head in confusion. But Kenneth knew better. His mind kept going back to the old woman under the mango tree. Her words echoed in his memory, let him learn what it means to walk in filth. Kenneth returned to the mango tree where he had met elder Mama Grace the day before. But when he arrived, she wasn't there. Her firewood was gone. Her cat was nowhere to be seen. The spot where she had sat was empty except for a strange ring of blackened soil on the ground. Kenneth walked through the village, asking everyone he met, have you seen elder Mama Grace? The old woman who lives near the forest. One woman replied, elder Mama? She comes and goes like the wind. Sometimes we don't see her for days, even weeks. An old man leaned closer and whispered, she was once very powerful, you know. Before your father bought half this village, she protected us from evil. But young people today have forgotten respect. That night, Kenneth sat alone in the garden, his mind heavy with worry. Then a gust of wind swept through the trees, and he heard a voice, soft as a whisper but clear as day. Let him walk where he splashed. Meanwhile, Thomas woke up in the ditch, confused and terrified. After seeing his dirty reflection in the stream, he tried to get help. He flagged down a motorcycle taxi driver. "Take me to the Adewale estate," Thomas demanded. "I'll pay you double." The driver looked at him and burst out laughing. "You? Pay me? Look at yourself. Go away before I call the police." Thomas was shocked. "Don't you know who I am? I'm Thomas Adewale. My father owns half of this state." "You're a crazy beggar, that's what you are," the driver said, speeding away. Thomas stumbled through the village, shouting for help. But no one recognized him. Not the shopkeepers he used to buy from. Not the police officers who usually saluted his family's cars. When he screamed his father's name, people thought he was insane. Finally, Thomas reached the gates of his family's estate. The guard stood blocking the entrance. "I am Thomas Adewale," he shouted desperately. "This is my father's house. Let me in." The guards exchanged confused looks. One of them laughed. You're Thomas Adewale? The Thomas we know is missing. You're just a dirty beggar trying to steal from rich people." "No. Look at me. It's really me," Thomas pleaded. Through the gate, he could see Kenneth talking with police officers in the compound. Thomas screamed at the top of his lungs. Kenneth, brother, it's me." Kenneth looked directly toward the gate, but his eyes passed right through Thomas as if he didn't exist. He turned away and continued talking to the officers. Thomas backed away slowly, his heart breaking. He ran to the side of the road and collapsed in the dirt, crying. This wasn't a dream. This was real. He had become invisible to everyone who knew him. He was nobody. The days that followed were the worst of Thomas's life. Hunger ate at his stomach like a wild animal. He begged for food from street vendors, but most chased him away. He slept under abandoned market stalls, trying to shield himself from the rain. He drank water from muddy puddles because no one would give him clean water. His pride, which had once been as tall as a skyscraper, crumbled to dust. One day, desperately hungry, Thomas tried to steal a piece of roasted corn from a woman's tray. She caught him and beat him with a broomstick, screaming, "Thief! Cursed beggar!" At night, Thomas cried himself to sleep. But he wasn't crying just from pain or hunger. He was crying because he finally understood. All the privilege, the power, the respect he once had, it was all gone. And all he had now was the mud. The same mud he had splashed on Elder Mama Grace. One evening, as Thomas lay beneath a tree, too weak to even brush away the mosquitoes biting his skin, he heard footsteps. He looked up and saw a figure approaching. Bare feet, a walking stick, and beside her a familiar black cat. Elder Mama Grace. So you have walked where you splashed, she said quietly. Thomas tried to speak, but only a hoarse croak came from his throat. His lips were cracked and dry. You laughed when I was covered in filth, Elder Mama continued. Now you wear it like skin. Thomas began to weep. Please, make it stop. I'm so sorry. Elder Mama Grace looked at him carefully, her ancient eyes studying his face. Are you sorry because you are suffering? Or are you sorry because you hurt another human being? Thomas opened his mouth to answer quickly, but then stopped. He had to think about it. Why was he really sorry? Elder Mama turned to walk away. Wait. Thomas called out weakly. I don't know the answer yet. But I want to know. Please, give me a chance to understand. She paused, then looked back at him. When you know the answer, truly know it, seek me again. And with that, she vanished into the shadows. The next morning, Thomas met an old man named Papa Stephen. Papa Stephen ran a small roadside suya stand where he grilled meat for customers. The business barely made enough money to feed him, but he had a kind heart. You look like death warmed over, Papa Stephen said, handing Thomas a small piece of leftover meat. Here, eat this. Thomas took it with trembling hands. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. You can wash my pots tomorrow morning if you want more food, Papa Stephen added with a wink. And that's how Thomas began his real education. He started working at the suya stand. Every day he swept the area, washed cooking trays, fanned the coals, and ran errands. Papa Stephen paid him in food and gave him a small mat to sleep on under the zinc roofing behind the stand. It wasn't much, but for the first time Thomas felt something new, purpose. Days turned into weeks. Thomas learned to listen without interrupting. He learned to see people, not just their clothes or status, but their hearts. He learned patience. He learned humility. He learned that every person, no matter how poor, had dignity and worth. Papa Stephen told him stories about the village's past. Money became the only thing people valued, the old man said one night. They forgot that kindness is the true measure of wealth. Papa Stephen, Thomas asked one evening, do you think I can find that old woman again? Elder Mama Grace. The old man smiled. Why do you want to find her? I want to apologize properly, Thomas said. Not because I want my old life back, but because what I did was wrong. She deserved respect, and I gave her cruelty instead. Papa Stephen's smile grew wider. Then you will find her, my son. When the heart bends low enough, heaven rises to meet it. At the estate, Kenneth never stopped searching. He hired spiritual consultants, visited churches, and even consulted traditional healers. None of them gave him answers, but he refused to give up hope. He had found the muddy note under the gate that read, "I'm ready to learn." He believed it was Thomas's handwriting. Kenneth began walking through the village every few days. He left extra food at roadside stalls. He greeted elderly women with respect. He offered free rides to market women carrying heavy loads. And always he watched carefully, hoping to find his brother. He didn't know that each time he passed Papa Stephen's suya stand, Thomas was hiding behind the zinc shed, too ashamed to reveal himself. Until one day their eyes met. It was brief, barely a second. But Kenneth stopped in his tracks. He turned around slowly and walked back toward the stand. "Thomas?" he whispered. Thomas stepped out slowly from behind the shed. He was thin, dirty, and his clothes were rags. But his eyes were different now, softer, humbler, aware. Kenneth's eyes filled with tears. "What happened to you?" Thomas shook his head. "Everything that should have happened." Kenneth immediately brought food and clothes. "Come home. Please come home right now." But Thomas raised his hand. "Not yet, brother. I need to do something first." That night, under a sky filled with stars, Thomas made the long walk to the forest's edge where the spirits were said to dwell. He called out into the darkness, "Elder Mama Grace, please show yourself. I'm ready." The wind stirred. The trees rustled. And then she was there wearing the same muddy wrapper. Her black cat curled at her feet. Her eyes held no anger, only ancient wisdom. Thomas knelt before her. "I have no excuse for what I did. I was proud, blind, and cruel. You were a mirror showing me my ugliness, and I tried to smash it. I have nothing left but this regret. I don't want my wealth back. I just want your forgiveness." Elder Mama Grace stared at him in silence. Then she asked, "Would you kneel like this for any poor person? Not just me, but anyone?" "Yes," Thomas replied without hesitation. "For the rest of my life if I have to." The wind became still. Her eyes softened. She leaned forward and touched his forehead lightly with one finger. "Then rise," she said simply. Thomas opened his eyes and found himself in his own bed. The room was clean, bright, and familiar. It was morning. He had returned. But something inside him had stayed in the mud forever. In the years that followed, Thomas launched the Walk in My Shoes Foundation. He built roads in rural villages, supported small traders, and taught empathy in elite schools across Nigeria. He paved the road where he had splashed Elder Mama Grace and named it Kindness Lane. Kenneth stood by his side always. Their father, humbled by his son's transformation, donated half his wealth to the foundation. Thomas visited villages regularly, mentored lost youth, and never again drove with arrogance. He married a simple village teacher and raised his children to understand that wealth without compassion is worthless. And every time it rained, Thomas walked barefoot through the puddles, remembering the lesson that changed his life. That true power lies not in what you have, but in how you treat those who have nothing. Elder Mama Grace watched from afar, a slight smile on her ancient face. The lesson had been learned. The soul had been saved. We've come to the end of today's story, and I hope it touched your heart. Thank you for watching, and remember to subscribe for more powerful and inspiring stories. See you in the next one.